Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Monday Munchies, or another edition, whatever, another video. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a Trinity. It's a vegetable seasoning that's often used in a lot of cooking from southern Louisiana, and it's very simple to make, adds a lot of flavor and depth to your food, and I think it's something that more people should incorporate instead of relying on powdered seasonings. So just a little bit of history lesson about the Trinity. So this goes back to the French and Indian War, which is really a war between France and England. France lost that war, and England demanded that they give them Canada as payment, or as like a debt for losing that war. So Canada for a long time was a French possession. It then became English, and then when England told the people living there, like, hey, you're now part of England, so whatever loyalty you have to France, you have to give up and like declare yourself to the crown, the English crown. The people of Nova Scotia, that kind of whole Nova Scotia Acadia region, decided that we're still loyal to France, so England told them either bend the knee or leave. And so they chose to leave, and where they chose to go was southern Louisiana, because at the time it was still French territory. It wasn't hadn't been bought by Thomas Jefferson yet. So they went down to southern Louisiana, and the name Cajun actually comes from a kind of bastardization of the word Acadian. So over time, Acadian became Cajun. That's why that kind of like around Lafayette, Opelousas, that whole area is called Acadiana, because of the Acadian connection to Nova Scotia. But back to the food. So French cooking, they use a lot of times as like a base for their food, what they call the Mirepoix. And the Mirepoix, you dice onions, celery, and carrots, saute those, and that's kind of like a base seasoning profile for your food. However, the Acadians, or Cajuns as they came to be called, I guess they didn't have good access to carrots, so what they used instead was something that was found more locally, which was bell pepper. So what I'm going to be showing you today is the Trinity, which will be celery, onion, carrots, bell pepper, and then there are also some other ingredients like green onions that I'm going to use, and also garlic. The garlic is more optional, whereas green onions is kind of a necessity. So like I said, it's a pretty simple thing to make. You can prepare it ahead of time, or you can make it as you're cooking, but either way, it's a great addition to your food. So I'm going to get you all set up on the tripod, and we're going to start dicing some vegetables. And you can see in the shot, I have my green pepper, my bell pepper is what I call it. I have an onion. This is a yellow onion. I mean, you can really use any onion you want, whether it's yellow, white, sweet, Vidalia. I just tend to get the cheapest one. Have 3 ribs of celery, a bunch of green onion, and when I say a bunch, I mean like it came rubber band together, so I'm not saying like, oh, I just grabbed a bunch. Like, it's just whatever came rubber band together is what I decided I'm going to use. And then we have 5 cloves of garlic. Some of these are quite big. But yeah, garlic is like I use that a lot in my cooking. So I'm going to start with the onion. Hopefully most of you know how to cut all of these vegetables, but if you don't, that's what I'm here for. So I'm going to get you zoomed in so you can focus a little bit more on the knife work. Take the lid off my compost. So how I cut onions is, first I cut off the ends. And with anything, you always want to make sure that your knife is sharp. But I cut off the ends, then I cut it in half. You want to peel the outer layers off because they're really papery. They don't really do much for you. They're kind of dried out. Onions have layers, as you would know if you watched the first Shrek movie. If you didn't watch the first Shrek movie, I don't know how you would have known that onions have layers. It's kind of where I learned it from. So the way that I cut my onions is I take them long ways, so you can see. Let's make sure I'm getting that in shot. All right, let's focus. You can see these veins running down the onion. That's what I consider the long way. So I first start my cutting by cutting it long ways like that. And always keep your fingers safe. Then I turn it and then I cut it this way. So it gives you these nice sized pieces. So let's get this in the shot. So these pieces are easily break apart from one another once they start cooking. Let's get the focus there. So doing it this way takes a lot of work. You don't have to cut it as many times to get it into small pieces. So that's 1/2 of the onion done. That doesn't take very long. It took me a little longer because I'm making sure I'm explaining things as I go. And so with a lot of the food that I cook, I use a lot of fresh ingredients. So I do a lot of chopping of onion, bell pepper, celery, green onion, garlic, etc. So I'm extremely comfortable doing these type of things. It doesn't faze me to have to add this to my cooking time. So that's 1 onion down. And in general, this is about the ratio that I use. So 1 onion, 1 bell pepper, 3 ribs of celery, a bunch of the green onion, and about 5 or 6 cloves of garlic. Obviously, you can scale this up pretty easily just by doubling everything, or you can scale it down. But if you use half a bell pepper, what are you going to do with the other half? We're just going to save it. Half an onion, same thing. So I just tend to do whole pieces. And if you've never cleaned a bell pepper before, I guess I should probably show that. So let's get a focus here. So I cut it in half first. Then I just grab the stem, peel that inwards, and that takes out some of this part, which is where all the seeds are connected. Then I grab it from the inside, pull that out. So that basically takes care of the whole thing. And then you have these ribs remaining, so I just pull those out. And that's how you clean the inside of a bell pepper. And bell peppers are a little more tricky to cut, but I take it like this and I hold it, and then I just cut it to the thickness that I want. So I cut it long ways, similar to the onion. I cut it long ways, and then I come back this way. And once again, this is something that you're going to be sauteing when you first start cooking. So the pieces don't need to be pretty because you're not cutting them for presentation. You're cutting them and you're adding them as part of the flavor profile. So some pieces are going to be irregularly shaped. You want them to be as close to uniform shape as possible, but don't fret over it. If you are just learning how to do this and it's not like going great the first time, that's okay, because I guess I'm going to sound a little bit like Bob Ross, but they're just happy accidents. You can work with them. It's not the end of the world. So just take your time, learn, get comfortable with the knife and cutting, and it'll all really start to come together with practice. So that onion's done bell pepper is done pretty quickly. So like I said, none of these things take a long time to prep. At most, it'll be 10 minutes, depending on how comfortable you are with the knife. But the work definitely pays off. So I'll show you one of these up close. So the green onion, those you only have to cut once because they're already kind of small. So we're just going to cut off the end, and then we're going to cut off the tip, and then we're going to cut off the root end, and then we're just going to deal with it from there. In this, maybe you'll get to see some of my fancy knife work that Katie always thinks when she sees me do this that I'm trying to show off, but I can promise you I'm not. And this is something in terms of knife skill that I learned how to do just from watching a lot of cooking shows. I really love, I used to watch a lot of cooking shows when I was younger. But I mean, I would see them do it and I just tried to emulate it. So it's no different than someone like watching Allen Iverson do a crossover and going out to the driveway. I guess that was kind of what I was doing instead. So let's take them, bunch them up. And here you want to curl your fingers back and tuck your thumb in so that you're not going to nick the tip of your finger. And then you can also use your knuckles as a guide. So I just go. You're just going to move the blade, move your hand back and move the blade along with it. Running out of real estate, so I'll clean this up. But yeah, green onions are really fun to chop once you get really comfortable with the knife and you get your skills up, because it goes very quickly and it smells great. It's a very fragrant smell, very vibrant, and that's the cool thing about kind of doing these diced vegetables. So I'll chop this up real quick. That's the great thing about doing these diced vegetables, is that it smells amazing as you're doing it. And even when you're sauteing them, the smell that it gives off is really great. And so just imagine what that's doing for your food. Next, the celery. This is another easy one to cut. So just like the green onion, we're going to take off the tips, rotate them around, take off the root. And for these, I like to cut them in half so that they're not too large of pieces. So I'm just going to take it, put your knife right in the middle, and drag it down the board, cut it in half. If they're very big, I might cut it into thirds, but these pieces are manageable. And similar to the green onion, I kind of roll through it. So you can see I'm using like a kind of a, if you ever seen a close-up of a train wheel, it goes like that. That's the cutting motion that I'm using. So it's not like it's not chopping, and I'll explain why chopping can be dangerous in a second. So by doing this motion, you can see, hopefully you can see, yeah, by doing this motion, your knife isn't lifting as high, so your chances of accidentally cutting yourself are much lower. But if you're chopping like this, you can see where my knuckles are in comparison to the knife, so your chances of nicking a finger or something are much higher. So by doing this, you're in a much more controlled fashion, you're less likely to injure yourself. And you're also just like, if you're doing a lot of cutting, doing this motion, this kind of smooth motion, saves a lot of energy compared to like doing this repeatedly. So just think about like doing the same motion repeatedly and kind of the stress that it puts on your arm as you chop. All right, so set that all to the side, and last, the garlic. And I should say another thing that you may see me doing while cutting is the way I hold my knife. So knives have handles, obviously, but I don't really use the handle. I hold my knife like this. So I place my thumb at the kind of heel of the knife, and my other finger is like that. So I'm kind of pinching the blade, and then I have these three fingers on here. And it gives me more control, and as I cut, I put more force over the area of the knife where I'm actually cutting, whereas back here, a lot of that force is being applied further back on the knife, even though I'm not cutting there. So it makes cutting a lot easier, and it gives me a lot of control over the blade, whereas this like just feels more loose. So for garlic, it's a pain to peel garlic. So what I usually do is place the garlic on the board, put my knife on the side, take the heel of my hand and smash it, and that quickly opens it up. makes it a lot easier to peel without like actually trying to trim it with a paring knife or something. And you can smash it some more. You can see how smashed it's gotten now. So that makes it a lot easier to dice it. So it's kind of already flattened out. So now I just run my knife over it. So now we have, in the span of 10 seconds, if I weren't talking, we're done with that 1 clove of garlic. So that's a lot faster than trying to take your time and peel it and then cut it like I cut the onion, for example. So I'm just gonna crush all of these. And I don't have a fancy knife. This is a Faberware knife. You can pick that up at Walmart. I bought this knife set years ago because it was cheap. And I'm able to do all this without much problem because one, I sharpen it. And two, I know what I'm doing. So you don't, as I said, if you watch my video with cookware, you don't need the fanciest equipment in the world. You don't need a lot of anything in terms of equipment to cook good food. You just have to, the main thing is knowing what you're doing. If you know what you're doing, you can work with almost any equipment that's out there. So that's kind of my whole approach to cooking, is knowledge over just fancy tools. So I'm gonna get the last of this garlic done. And once again, because this isn't being presented, the size doesn't matter that much. You just want to make it smaller than it was, but we're not trying to do minced garlic or anything. We're just trying to break it down a little bit so that when you saute it, the flavors come out a lot faster. For certain dishes, you might want to leave bigger garlic pieces. So if you're making certain types of pasta, maybe you just want to crush it once and then that's fine. I do that from time to time. Or foods where it's going to cook for a long time, then the garlic will actually kind of break down. Then I might not actually crush it. Or I might not do this whole dicing process. I might crush it and just throw it in. So for when I make black beans, for example, I don't really crush it up that much. Or I should say I don't dice it that much. All right, so that's looking good. And now grab a bigger bowl so that you all can kind of see what this all looks like mixed together. Now zoom you out. So make sure you get the shot. And you can kind of see the ratio of colors that we have going on here, because that's a good way to know whether you have the right amount of all the ingredients. So mix this around, and so you're just looking for the ratio of white to green. And obviously the only white thing you really add is the onion, and the green, you have the green onion, the bell pepper, and the celery. But this to me is a good ratio of white to green that I'm seeing. And yeah, this is, like I said, a lot of the food that I cook starts off with me doing this, throwing it into the skillet or into my Dutch oven with, let me turn you on my face. Oh. Hands are slippery, no. Yeah, so a lot of the cooking that I do starts off with me going through this process of cutting these up, put it in the skillet or my Dutch oven, sauteing it in oil, and then I start to add my other ingredients. But doing this alone and just adding some salt to it adds so much flavor, without you having to immediately rush to your garlic powder, your onion powder. Maybe you use celery root or celery salt. I don't know any way you can add green onions without adding green onions. So try it out. It's a great way to kind of enhance the flavor in any dish without doing too much extra work. And it also get you more comfortable with your knife skills. So hopefully you all take part in this. See you next time. Peace.